issue? There we go. That's all right.
Okay.
So those who they'll get the introduction. So anyway, I started my journey towards being plant-based back in 8th grade, and it started with my concern about the environment. Then as I was moving into high school, started being concerned about the communal aspect in terms of people working in the meat industry and how they were being treated. Then I was in college, moved more, and also actually take that back. In 8th grade too, was also concerned about my health, my own physical health. Then college, it became more of a bringing into the thinking about it from a spiritual perspective, and what is I loving neighbor, God, and self through the choices I made. And so it's been a journey. Some days you make a couple steps forwards, some days you make a couple steps back, but that's kind of where I have been on the journey. And then my husband is also on a similar story, even though I was born and raised in California and he was born and raised in South Carolina. In terms of my vocational background, I have a degree in exercise physiology, and I am a nutrition specialist, not a registered dietitian, but I have had some training in nutrition. I also am a health and wellness coach, and then I'm also the executive director of an organization that Travis and I co-founded called Healthy Seminarians, Healthy Church. And the mission of our organization is to bring greater health and wholeness among seminarians, clergy, community of faith folks, and anybody who is interested in living a more, seeking to live a healthier lifestyle. And one of the core values of our organization is that we do promote whole food, plant-based, and when possible, to reducing one's consumption of oils and refined sugars. And I'm really excited to be able to share my passion with you today. And also, in terms of disclaimers, I have no commercial affiliations. So any products that I mention, I have no financial incentive. Alrighty, so to get us started, like I said, it's going to be 10 recipes, strategies for success in the kitchen. And again, there's a lot of whole food, plant-based recipes out there. I mean, you can find them online, you can find them in the library. I mean, there's cookbooks here, people will give them to you. But a lot of times what I find is that in order to even begin to use the recipes, people are concerned about the costs and the time that has to go into all of that. So a lot of times that can be daunting before you even get to actually looking at the recipes. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on what are some things that we can do to make it so that it's affordable, as well as also saving some time in the kitchen, because a lot of times I know people are concerned about how long it takes to do things. So therefore, I'm hoping that my strategies will help you to make living a more whole food, plant-based lifestyle more attainable for you, at whatever level is realistic for you and where you are in your journey towards that. So number one strategy is batch cook. I mean, you probably heard that over and over and over again. And for some people, you might say, okay, well, what is batch cooking anyway? So simply, really, the heart of it is just cook a whole bunch more than what you normally do, or twice as much. And in terms of batch cooking, that can be, say you were going to make one pot of soup, like say for 2 people, only that much. Well, instead, just double what you make. And by batch cooking, then what happens is the way I look at it is, first of all, when you batch cook, you reduce the amount of, say, times you are measuring out the ingredients and chopping things and washing things and drying things and putting things away. Because when you go to double something to make a recipe, it's far more efficient than, say, make the soup here on this day, and then 2 weeks later, make it on this day. And one of the things that we do when we're making, say, soup as an example of batch cooking, is that we will make twice as much soup as we're going to be eating in that week. And then what we do is we just put them in mason jars like this with a plastic lid or a metal lid. And then you stick them in the freezer with the lid off, and then we label them on top. Or I have found sometimes the Sharpie pen does not wash off. So I have this really high tech writing on cardboard and on a rubber band, sticking that in the freezer, because every once in a while the lid gets a little bit crowded with what on it, and we don't remember entirely what we're eating. It's good, we just don't know necessarily when it's frozen what it is. So we will,
If you take the lid off, how does it stay fresh? I thought you said.
no, when you first put it in, you want to keep the lid off because it needs some space to
Oh,
expand.
yeah.
And then once it's frozen, then you keep it.
Yeah.
And then, so then what you also have is then when you are ready, say the next week, when say your schedule is busy, you can go ahead and just pull things from the freezer. Or for instance, maybe you don't want to have soup a zillion times in 1 week. So again, you take take what we've made, stick it in the freezer, a couple each time we make something. So then that way we have an assortment in the freezer. And recently when we were traveling, as we were talking about going to Indianapolis, we went ahead and put 3 servings for each of us in our cooler. One of them was each had a curry, each of us had a corn chowder, and each of us had some rice and beans. And so again, we were eating 6 of the same thing. And the other thing too, what's wonderful about traveling when you have these mason jars, again, obviously we're in the car, not flying, but they also work as great ice blocks. So if they're frozen, then you can really get where you're going and you don't have to worry about them falling out. So that's one of the things, the benefits about batch cooking. And then the other thing too is that also doesn't just mean necessarily making a pot of soup. Another way of looking at batch cooking is I will just dedicate a few hours, whatever day of the week suits for you. And I just dedicate that time to doing a bunch of stuff because again, you have all your stuff out in the kitchen, you just kind of make a mess once. Again, there's just 2 of us, so we're not cooking for a lot of people, so it can last longer. And in that way, so that might be also just chopping up vegetables, where at the beginning of the week, I chop up a bunch of vegetables, I wash fruit, cook up some beans, cook up some grains, stick in the fridge. And then say, for instance, I'm in the mood to have a sandwich. Well, I can go in there and grab my vegetables and my stuff, have a sandwich. You know, maybe my husband wants a salad. He can go in and make a salad. Then towards later in the week, you know, you sit there and say, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and throw some of these leftovers into a pot. Make it, you know, either a soup or a stir fry. So again, batch cooking doesn't necessarily mean making one meal, but you can just, I think of batch cooking as just setting aside time in the kitchen, doing a bunch of stuff at that moment in time. And also too, I find that if you're just single-minded on the cooking, then you can get a lot of stuff done in a bit of time. So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is thinking beyond one meal. So this is slightly different than batch cooking because, for example, when I cook beans, I'm always thinking beyond that particular meal that I'm cooking for. So for instance, if I'm going to be cooking up some white beans, I'm thinking, okay, so the white beans are going to be going into the main dish I'm making this week, but you know what, those white beans will also be good in the future hummus. And oh, those white beans I actually will use probably either in a salad, or actually a lot of times I put beans in desserts, which I'll be talking a little bit about. And so again, that's also, if you're going to cook beans, do it at one time and just, take what I need for the one dish I'm making. And then I put the other 2 in bags, stick them in the freezer. You do have to have freezer space. Our freezers are jammed. So I will say that. And so that is an example of thinking beyond one meal. And then also in terms of strategy number 3, frozen foods are good, they're healthy, and they are an affordable option. So for instance, this bag right here of 2 pounds, I just used a Giant Eagle. But so 2 pounds of frozen vegetables will run you, depending on between Walmart and Giant Eagle. I mean, it can be anywhere between $2.50, $3.50 for, again, this is a non-organic. But again, when they are picking the produce to pack them away for frozen, they're at their peak nutrients level, put it in the freezer. So yes, obviously local, organic, fresh is ideal, but also there is no shame in using frozen vegetables because it really is affordable. And the other thing too that I really like about and you can also, they have the cauliflower, the broccoli, the peppers, all that kind of stuff, is that also though for people who have, for instance, hand issues, wrist issues and stuff, and chopping is really not very accessible. This also is accessible for that, or for people who have back or knee issues. Again, thinking about orthopedic issues, having frozen vegetables where you don't have to chop, that also makes it much more accessible for you. So it does save time. It also allows people who maybe have some orthopedic issues to be able to have vegetables and other things that they wouldn't necessarily have. So don't be afraid of the freezer section. And actually, a lot of times people are surprised when I say, when I'm looking for organic frozen produce, actually, believe it or not, Whole Foods actually has a really good selection of affordable organic produce. Also, I will also get some of it, although it's a limited selection at Aldi's. So, but those are a couple places where I do get my organic frozen produce. So again, if we're going into Pittsburgh for something, we just make sure that we always bring a cooler so we can bring back some of their frozen produce, especially in the winter months when I don't have as much accessibility to the local fresh produce. Strategy number 4 is I talked about a little bit at the plant-based, making your own plant-based milk or plant-based milks, is that the immersion blender plus mason jar, this, my friends, is a winning combination. So for instance, when I go to make some hummus or salad dressing, I will put it in this glass jar. I'm not getting out a food processor, a Vitamixer, all those kinds of things. I put it in the jar, blend it in the jar, put the lid on the jar, put it in the refrigerator. Not multiple. I don't have to have the bowl and this and this and that. Now, sometimes though, you know, I'm not necessarily making that much hummus or that much salad dressing. Yeah. But at the time, I'm usually making a bunch of stuff because I'm batch cooking. So maybe a next day later, I might then put it out into a couple smaller jars. But in that moment, when I'm making a mess in the kitchen, I'm very glad just to have the jar, put the lid on, stick it in the fridge, deal with it later. So yeah, I absolutely love an immersion blender, and they are of some of the kitchen gadgets that are out there. They are some of the most affordable. I know Aldi's recently had them for less than $20. So if you're on a budget, that to me is one of my favorite go-to kitchen things to use. And strategy number 5 is stagger the little things that take up time now, but will save you time in the future. So for instance, like I will use a lot of applesauce, and rather than buy a small container of applesauce that I need for right now, then what I usually would do is if I need to buy applesauce, thankfully though, right now, actually a lot of local apples are coming in. So I'm actually making some applesauce. That takes time, but it's actually, it's worth my time because we use a lot of applesauce. But if you buy the bigger jar of applesauce, then a lot of times what I do is then I will just go ahead and put it into the ice cube trays, the ones that are a little bit thicker or bigger. And those usually average out to be about 2 tablespoons a piece. Stick it in the freezer, and then that way when I need 2 tablespoons of applesauce for this or 2 tablespoons of that, or if you're going to be baking a plant-based cake that has a cup of applesauce or a half cup of applesauce, you can also do other size containers. And so I usually, but again, it's easier if you're able to buy the slightly bigger one for if you're, it's because it is cheaper than buying the smaller ones and using it at the time that you need it. So that's one way you can do it. Another thing too is, like, for instance, when I've got the time, a lot of times I use soup broth for sauteing and other things. And so I will make up a batch of soup broth, let it cool. And then again, I'll put those in ice cube trays. So then when I want to saute up something on the stovetop, then I just pop out, a block or 2, my vegetables, we're good to go. So then that way I'm not having to, even something as simple as taking like a dry soup broth, heating up the water, getting it ready, that takes time. I only just do it once. So that saves time in the future. And again, also, same thing like with batch cooking is if you have the time to make twice as much, that you can eat it later, then that does also save time in the future and when you're able to do it now. So it just depends on your schedule. When I have time, that's when I do a bunch of stuff. And then there'll be weeks where I'm not doing much in the kitchen at all. Then strategy 6 is to maximize the appliances you do have. So this over here is my makeshift example of our toaster oven. Because I didn't want to bring the toaster oven. And it's actually the same size as our toaster oven. So I love our toaster oven. And again, it's this size here. And one of the things I love about it is that it is one of the most eco-friendly ways of cooking, because it does use some of the least amount of energy in your house, as opposed to kicking up and using your, particularly if you have a gas oven. And the other thing too, though, I love about my toaster oven is this is one of my favorite cooking bowls here, because you can go ahead, put your beans in there with the water, stick them in your toaster oven, and you can cook your beans. What I love about cooking your beans, no open flame if you have got a gas stove or even a hot surface. So it's kid friendly, it's pet friendly. And the other thing too is that you're not having, you come back and I'll stir it. But you cook it at a lower temperature, but I work from home. And so I put it in the oven or the toaster for about 90 minutes at 250. And I've got beans.
That's the first time I've heard this.
Yes, you can do that with beans. You can do that with rice, any of the grains. if you've got a toaster oven that's relatively big, you can cook a lot of your stuff. You don't have to have a lot of the other gadgets out there that you think you might need to have in your kitchen. If you have them, that's great. But if you don't, the toaster oven is definitely the way to go. So that is my,
Do you mean like the dry beans that you soak? Okay,
yeah, dry beans, you
Yeah.
soak them. And actually, I have not done it because I've just gotten so used to soaking it, but a couple of the people have said that you don't even have to soak them. I soak them. I just soak them overnight and then I just stick them in here with the water. And then you just let them cook away. It usually takes about 90 minutes for me to do. I usually do about 1.5 cups of the dry measured out to make the beans in there. And then usually say to cook like a brown rice, I found it took about 30 minutes. But again, you just stick it in there. I carry on with things and we have 4 cats. So not having to worry about kitty cats on the stovetop with open flames. Yes, we like that. Or if you have children, grandchildren, you don't have to worry about that. So this is, and the other thing too, this Pyrex, this is also my favorite way is if you do have a microwave and you want to make your air popcorn, you just put in 1/4 cup to 1/3 cup of popcorn in here, crack it a little bit, stick it in the microwave on the popcorn function. You got air popcorn. Ta-da! Again, you don't have to, no oil, nothing. You just stick it in there, you got popcorn. So you don't have to have a popcorn popper either. So I'm gonna put my little,
I like that.
put my little bowl back in my toaster. And then my strategy number 6 is, or 7, is to let your leftovers work for you. So one of the things is, say you got some leftover greens that are getting kind of tired. You know what you do? So say like I got kale, spinach, something like that. Put them in my mason jar here, and I will soak probably say like 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds. I've soaked those, put them in there. A little bit of chopped up dates, a little bit of garlic, minced garlic or garlic powder, a little bit of onion powder, salt, not salt, pepper, and a little bit of balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar. I make a dressing. So you can take your greens and you just basically can repurpose them as a salad dressing, and it's fantastic. You can also, of course, too, if you got tired greens, you can also make all umpteen different ways of doing pesto. So people a lot of times think about just basil. I can only do pesto with basil. Oh no, carrot tops, basil, kale, collards, you name it. If it's a green, you can make it into pesto. So that's an example. Or for instance, Halloween pumpkins. A lot of times people sit there and think, like the pie pumpkins, you think pumpkin pie, and that's it. Oh no. There are so many things you can do with pumpkin. And so, I mean, for instance, you can put the pumpkin puree in your soups. It's a great way if you're making pancakes for kids or adults too. You can put the pumpkin in the pancake batter, adds a bunch of nutrients, can't taste it. Or of course too, also a lot of plant-based baking, using pumpkin as a fat replacement works fantastically. Plus, I mean, so it helps to bring moisture to the cake, but it also increases the nutrients of it. So I can tell you that over the years, we have tried out zillions of different kinds of ways of using pumpkin. So if you want any ideas, please ask. And so those are just kind of, again, just thinking about, you know, using your leftovers. And again, like I mentioned before too, chopped vegetables can go from a salad to a soup, or I'll blanch them, stick them in the freezer, and then I'll use them later for something. So again, you can always find a way to repurpose your leftovers, but you don't want to have food waste from both an economic, environmental perspective, but also save yourself some time in the kitchen later and save yourself some money. You don't want to waste money. All right, then last couple of strategies, and then I'll show you some couple of dishes. Strategy number 8 is that many of the common flours and meals that we think that we need for plant-based baking, people will go to the store and buy. Well, you can make them yourself. So for instance, if you want oat flour, here's my really high-tech coffee grinder. You want oat flour, you stick 1/2 cup of oats in here, you got oat flour. And oats run, I mean, even organic ones, and we buy them in bulk from the co-op in Pittsburgh, between about $1.70 and $2 a pound. So think about how much you're paying for oat flour in the grocery store if you're paying for it. Other thing too is, especially if you are thinking about time and you go to make a recipe and you're like, oh, I don't have, say, almond flour. Well, when we want to do almond flour, I will chop it up first in here, my almonds, and then I'll blend it in there just to make the life of my coffee grinder last a little bit longer. But again, there's no need to go buy almond flour if you just have the whole almonds. And that's also significantly cheaper and it's fresher. That's the other thing too. And again, with flaxseed, you really want to, when you have flaxseed, you really don't want to buy the meal because as soon as it's ground, it starts releasing its nutrients. So what we do with flax seed is a lot of times, again, thinking about one of my other strategies was when you have a little bit of time, we'll grind up flaxseed, put it in a mason jar in the freezer. So then when we just need a couple of tablespoons later, we go ahead and do it. But again, if you buy flaxseed, that's less than $2 a pound, and you can make a zillion flax eggs with flaxseed, or again, putting in all different kinds of things. So again, this is also one of my favorite, but yeah, so you can also, when it comes to making your own meals or flours, that goes everything from flaxseed meal to oats to buckwheat flour to millet to amaranth to rice flour. Again, all can be done in your coffee grinder. So we do have our coffee grinder specifically for our grains. We have a coffee grinder specifically for our spices, and we do drink coffee, and that's a different one. So
I just have to say, because Millicent, one of the members of Plant-Based Pittsburgh, she said one time that she figured out that if it calls for, say, a cup of oat flour, if you put a cup and a quarter of regular oats, it comes out to about a cup.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Yes.
so I mean,
it's nice if you're blending everything together.
yeah. I mean,
So it's about a quarter off, like.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself am not very strict on following recipes. And so the exact ratios, a lot of times I'll say it's 1-for-1, but if you are a more precise baker, then that is helpful to know, because I will just I just amend things as I'm going. I also will say that if you are using oat flour as a replacement for, say, white flour, is that a lot of times it does require more liquid because it absorbs. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. I mean, I love using oat flour as a replacement for white flour. It's one of my favorites. And again, too, it's very affordable. But yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that with us. And then 2 more strategies. Now I'm going to share with you a couple of spicy secrets. So for instance, I love using ginger in my cooking, but a lot of times I cannot stand grating the ginger. So what I will do is, going back to the other step, is when I have a little bit of time, I'll take the ginger and I will do a whole bunch, just knock it all out. Then I'll stick it in the freezer. So then when I need it for future things, I can use it. The other thing about that too is that you also, how many of us buy ginger root for one dish and then all of a sudden it starts getting moldy and nasty because you didn't need the whole thing? So again, if you're going to buy fresh ginger, don't get me wrong, I use dry a lot as well. But if you're going to buy ginger, rather than have it go bad on you, just go ahead and zest it, stick it in the freezer, and you're ready to go future. So yeah.
You can produce the whole thing and
Yes.
then grate it as you go, but.
It doesn't work as well because the consistency of the ginger changes and it gets mushy. So the mushy gets harder to grate. So that's why I usually grate it when it's still fresh. But yeah, so that's one thing to do with ginger. Another thing too is that granulated garlic really is my good friend. I do love fresh garlic, and especially this time of year, you know, we have actually a fair amount in our garden. But the amount of garlic we eat, I am not going to chop up all of the cloves. So I definitely do the granulated garlic as opposed to the garlic powder because it doesn't clump up as much. Same thing with onions. We'll buy a minced onion. And again, if you need onion powder, then we'll use our spice mill and break it down into the smaller, so more of a onion powder. But otherwise, onion powder too, it also clumps up. So that's why we usually do the granulated and the minced. And again, we buy it in bigger quantities because it's cheaper. And then we just keep them, you know, in these very classy looking mason jars. And so that's, and actually one other thing, also in addition to the ginger, is that other fresh herbs though, like basil and stuff like that, if you've got too much, you can also put that in the freezer. It's going to lose some of its consistency. It's going to turn a little bit darker. However, if you're going to be throwing it in a soup or something, you can use it later. So you can do that with basil. You can do that with parsley. Lots of the things you can put in the freezer. Or if you bought some nice basil, you know, any of those herbs, you can also, as soon as you're done, just wash it, you know, wash it, dry it, put a little rubber band on it and a little paper clip, hang it somewhere and let it dry. And you can use it dry later. So you don't have to let it sit there and die in your refrigerator, because that breaks my heart, because you don't waste food and you feel sorry for it. So that's how we usually freezer, or just hang it upside down and let it dry. And then it's usually ready to go in a couple of weeks. So those are a couple of things to think about in terms of spices.
You do the stems also when you're.
So when I'm hanging it, I just hang it from the, so yeah, the stem, so like a basil, stem and all is hung upside down, because that way it dries that way, and then when I go to use it, I just break off the leaves.
I mean, if you freeze it.
Yeah, I put the whole thing in the freezer, and then when I'm ready to use it, I just pull it off. You can, if you want, save yourself that step, but usually I'm in a hurry. So I just put the whole thing in the freezer and I just pull the leaves off later.
You grind the stems and then freeze them, or
Grind.
like stems in the pesto, do you put the stems in the pesto?
Oh, so if I'm making pesto, then yes, yeah, you can, I mean, you can, well, it depends, it's the high up in the plant, yes, lower down is woody, so I would not want to put the lower stems in the pesto. All right, last strategy, and I'll show you a couple of recipes, is thinking about stretching your dollar and environmental impact. One of the things that I always like to encourage people to use is sunflower seeds. Because say, for instance, a lot of times, looking at the cost per pound, a lot of folks like to use cashews as a alternative to the cheeses. Cashews, especially if you're buying fair trade organic ones, are extraordinarily expensive. And the thing is that the cashew industry is challenging. Let's put it that way. And so if you are going to buy cashews, you really should be buying fair trade, because the way people are treated is not acceptable. And also the environmental impact. So one of the ways, again, to cut down on the cost of using cashews is, say, for instance, if I'm making a cashew ricotta, I will usually use between 1/4 and 1/3 of a cup of sunflower seeds, because that actually adds up after a while. That reduces the cost. Also, sunflower seeds have some of the lowest food print in terms of the seeds and nuts that are out there. So again, it's also, it's cheaper for your pocketbook. It's cheaper in terms of environmental impact. Also, sunflower seeds are also great for those who have allergen issues in terms of the nuts. And so I use sunflower seeds for a lot of things, because in that way, it does make it more accessible to more folks. Also, too, sunflower seeds have a nice, generally speaking, especially when they're raw, more of a just kind of a neutral flavor. As soon as you toast them, their flavor is going to come out. One thing I will say, though, is if you are going to use, say, ground up sunflower seeds in a dish, say if you're baking something and you're wanting to, say, even cut the amount of almonds, because again, almonds are expensive, and you want to use sunflower seeds to reduce the cost of that. If you use sunflower seeds and if you use baking soda, do not be alarmed if your baked good turns a little bit green. It's not unhealthy. It's not going to hurt you. It's a chemical reaction. So just know, if you put ground up sunflower seeds in something, it could turn a little bit green. So I don't usually use sunflower seeds in my baked goods. That's going to be cooked with, like I said, if you're doing something and I have something that doesn't have baking powder, baking soda in it, it's fine. So that's a couple of things to think about in terms of sunflower seeds. So there's a couple of my quick strategies. I'm going to pause for a second, see if you have any questions, and then I'll do the recipes. They're quick and easy.
I'm going to start with granulated garlic.
Yes.
I have never done that.
Really?
I have not.
Oh, yeah, this is the way to go.
So where do you just buy it in bulk? Or
So,
you buy?
so like we do buy a lot of our spices online. So for
Okay.
instance, because we do so much cooking and so much garlic eating, we will buy it by the pound. And so
Yeah, I love
we'll buy
garlic.
like Frontier is just one of the brands out there, and we buy the organic granulated garlic. And the thing is that if you really want to keep it the absolute freshest, you can keep the bag that you're not using in your freezer. We don't, because we go through it relatively fast. Another thing too is if you're interested in, and I did look it up the other day, what is the nutritional difference between the fresh and the granulated? So you do have a little bit of reduction in the vitamin C. However, if you're eating whole food plant-based and you are eating already so many fruits and vegetables, not too worried about my reduction in my vitamin C. In terms of the allicin, which is one of the really important health benefits that you get from garlic, it's also the granulated garlic, so you're not losing that. So the health benefits that tied to heart disease and cancers and all those anti-inflammatories, all that kind of stuff, it's still also in the granulated. Yeah.
Selling co-op, East End Food Co-op has it.
Yes, they
Oh,
also,
do
if you
you?
want to buy,
Too,
if you want to buy
yeah.
a small amount, you can also buy it at the co-op. But yeah.
Even if you would buy organic granulated, it would still have all the
Mhm.
bad stuff.
Mhm.
I just recently learned too about the oatmeal that it has glyphosate. So many of our products, Cheerios,
Mhm.
glyphosate.
Yep.
Same ingredient as Roundup.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. Yes, absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Do you use the same coffee grinder for your herbs and for your coffee?
No. No, we have the coffee maker or the coffee grinder that's black is for coffee. The coffee maker that is gray is for our grains. The herb one is red. I am not gonna have, because we do like spicy, I am not gonna have cayenne in my coffee. I'm not gonna have cayenne in my oat. No, so we actually do have 3 coffee grinders.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's a major foul. No.
Just another question.
Yes.
You freeze soy milk?
You can, the only thing with it sometimes is that it will break down a little bit when you go to reuse it. So if you're gonna reuse it in a baked product, it's totally fine, but it's gonna be a little bit chunky when you, like, if you were to pour it on cereal. But yeah, you can definitely freeze, like the oat milk and the soy milk, it's just a little chunky. Any other questions? Alrighty.
How about lemon? Freeze
Let-
lemon?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, the thing is with lemons, really do try to buy organic when you can. One of the things about lemons is that actually, what we do is when we get lemons, is that we will, if I only need lemon juice, I always zest them first and put the zest in the freezer because zest is great. Another thing too, or both with lemon peels as well as orange peels, is that, say for instance, we make herb tea all the time. And so like I'll peel an organic orange, I'll put that peel in the freezer and take little pieces off when I'm making a green tea and add in the orange peel and some of the other herbs that we use with our green tea. It brings a really nice fruitiness to the tea without you saying, oh, that's orange. So in our household, it's only after the orange peels have been used for something else that they end up in our compost pile. And so, but yeah, definitely lemons, limes, any kind of citrus, you don't want to just throw those peels away because you can use them for a lot of things. But again, really, if you're able to get the organic because of all the waxes and stuff that are on the conventional, you don't really want to eat that if you're using the peel. Alrighty, any other questions? All right, so here are a couple of quick and easy recipes for you. One, my most favorite one that my mother-in-law shared with me probably about 15 years ago, called pantry soup. And so quick and easy is you got your cooking pot. And so you either do your cooked beans you pulled from the freezer or your can of beans that goes in there. Okay, you also you put in some of your, well, I'll do it in the order you're supposed to do it. So I'll put in a cube of the soup broth that I had in the freezer, throw that in there. Then I'm gonna chop up an onion, throw that in there. Then I'm gonna just let it soften a little bit. Then I'm gonna go ahead and throw in, and say I'm in a hurry, I'm just gonna put in my vegetables. Then I'm gonna throw in my beans. I'm gonna throw in my tomato juice. And again, actually, if you're looking for organic tomato juice, actually 365 brand is pretty reasonable. So I'm gonna take my tomato juice, stick that in my pot. Then we still have some leftover tomatoes from our garden last year, so I would use that in my house. But you would just get like a regular 14-ounce can, reasonably priced. You can get those at Aldi's. Stick that in there. Then if you want a little bit of Italian seasoning, you stick that in there, warm it up. You got pantry soup. So now you can also, like, again, if you're not in a hurry and you have seasonal vegetables, like the recipe I'll be giving you actually says, for instance, it says like 1 cup of onions. And again, if you're in a hurry or have orthopedic issues, you can buy pre-chopped onions if you'd like. 2 stalks of celery. Again, if you buy celery and you don't have the ability to use all the celery, because some people, celery is not their thing, but you like it in soup. If you bought celery and you've got some left over, go ahead, chop it up, blanch it in that's also my blancher pot right there. I will blanch it in the microwave for about 3 minutes, let it cool, stick it in the freezer. Next time I need to make soup, I just dump that in. So I basically have gotten my frozen celery all ready to go. You don't have to worry about having it turn yellow on you and then you end up throwing it away because you didn't get to it fast enough.
I don't even blanch mine.
Pardon?
Why do you blanch it?
Because otherwise it could kind of a freezery taste. So there's some vegetables that are okay to chop, like you can chop like peppers and tomatoes and stuff, and I put those in the freezer without blanching. But like green beans, if you don't blanch them, there's a yucky. Broccoli, cauliflower, I usually blanch those, put them in, but I don't do the stovetop blanching and put them in the ice water. Oh no, life's too short for that. So I just simply put them in a pot. I mean, if you want to put them on a stovetop, or if you're okay with a microwave, depending on your preference, you do that. And then I just put them in a colander, rinse them for a second. Then I put them in a bag, stick them in the freezer, and they're good to go whenever you need them. So, and I do label my Ziploc bags that I have in the freezer, because sometimes you sit there and think, I'll remember what that is. You will not sometimes. And you're like, I don't know what this is. So I have just learned to label my Ziplocs. It is also called for like 2 medium carrots, a clove of garlic. So I mean, it's some of the affordable vegetables, onions, celery, zucchini, and carrots. But again, if you're in a hurry, you can just buy whatever vegetables you want from the freezer section, throw those in. Or you might have some things, again, in your pantry, and you just want to throw them in. Or say you've got a leftover a cup of rice from something, you can throw that in. It's called pantry soup for a reason. So you can just, you can just put in what you want. But again, you can make a pantry soup, especially if you're using freezer stuff. You can make your soup. You prep it in about 10 minutes, but it probably takes about 15 minutes to cook. Super easy, super healthy, and very low maintenance, because also just one pot. So that is the pantry soup. And like I said, I will give you the recipe if you'd like that. And also I do a couple other quick tricks too, is I actually do usually add a little bit of balsamic vinegar in it. And I did put that in the recipe just to give a little bit of the acid. And then the other thing too I found is, especially with tomato product, if your tomatoes aren't at the height of the season and they need just a little undertone of sweet, but you don't want to add sweet. Actually, if you just take a little bit of cinnamon, put that with your tomato product, whether it's making pasta sauce, soup like that, just put a little bit of cinnamon in, and that will bring up the sweetness of the tomato. So that's how you can do it without adding sugar or other sweeteners. So we also do buy cinnamon in bulk, because we also use a tremendous amount of cinnamon. But yeah, so that is pantry soup. Then the second recipe I'm going to show you is trail mix bars. Now, a lot of people know about making the no-bake bars, but I have a twist on the no-bake bars that I have. So to make a no-bake bar, got your bowl. And then you will have your 2.5 cups of seeds, nuts, again, depending on if you have any allergies. You put that in there. You have a 1.5 cups of oats. Then I usually chop up a cup of dates. Most affordable dates, if you are looking around here right now, usually we buy them in bulk online, but if you're looking to just buy them locally, actually Aldi's, especially when they're at $3.99 per bag, that's a great deal. Most of the time they're $4.99, but we'll use dates. And then dried fruit of your choice. Raisins are some of the cheapest. Even the organic ones, organic raisins, I would also preference buying organic raisins because of the number of pesticides on regular grapes. So, and then we had some apples that we got last year. These are actually still left over from that. And I dehydrated them. And so dehydrated apples are great. But again, whatever dried fruit. The thing is though, is I usually try to emphasize fruits that have the natural sugars already in them, as opposed to, don't get me wrong, I love dried cranberries. However, they're laden with sugar unless you get the ones that are sweetened with apple juice. However, those ones are expensive, although you can make those yourself, which is another lesson if you want to know about that. Then also I'll do a 1/4 cup of flaxseed that I've ground in my gray spice maker. And then I have my cup of, you can either use peanut butter, or I just made that yesterday. It's not the most appealing color, but that's a roasted sunflower seed. So again, if people have allergies, it's also mostly expensive. So there's that. And then again, if you are not anti-salt, you can put a pinch of salt. Otherwise, if you don't want salt, you don't have to, because again, the peanut butter or the sunflower seed had no salt in it. So the whole thing would be, to meet my taste, I have a little bit of salt. I sweat. I don't mind having a little bit of salt in my life. But again, some people I know that don't want that. So that's fine too. And the other ingredient too, is you can either do like 3 mashed bananas, or you can use about 2/3 of a cup of applesauce. Throw it all in there, mix it all up. And then you just take your 9x13 pan, you put down parchment, mush it in, and then, that's a very technical cooking term, by the way. Yeah, mush it in. Oh, the other thing too, when I mix it, is that this is cute and this is like the best way to do it, but especially if, you know, so if you're doing it for company, I would put on the plastic gloves, but I just do it with my hands. It is much easier because this just doesn't really cut it. So this is mostly for show and to wave. But yeah, no, I mushed it with my hands, stick it in here, mush it. And then the other thing too about when you use parchment, A, you don't have to use any oil to grease your pans. So we use parchment for everything. B, when you go to cut it, you take it out, plop it down, chop it. Then when you need to bring it to share it with people, you just put it back in. So that's the, and no bake bars. And it usually takes about, if you're in a hurry to eat them, they usually say about an hour in the freezer to thaw or to firm them up. Otherwise, I mean, you can just stick them in the refrigerator. You can eat them right away if you want. It does just feel a bit firmer if you let them sit a little bit longer. But life's short, a lot of times I just eat it. As I'm making it, I push it all in and oh, there's a little extra, I'll eat it. So again, you don't have like, it's not nothing needs to be baked. So there's nothing you have to wait for it to.
Are you going to share that recipe with us?
Yes, we'll share that recipe
Okay.
with you. And these are also something you'll have a chance to sample. So with these ones here, these ones do not have any peanut in them. However, if you have any tree nut allergies, those are in there. These are made with oats. There's no gluten, but they are not specifically gluten-free oats. So they are oats. So if you have a really high sensitivity to gluten, just be aware of that. I did not specifically get gluten-free ones. So that is the trail mix bars. And again, whatever seeds, whatever dry fruit you have on hand, you make those. And the thing is too, what I really like about them is that they do travel well. So I will make some, put them in a bag, and especially if my husband and I are going to be jumping on a plane somewhere, they're frozen when we bring them. And then we just stick them in our carry-on or in our suitcase. And then we have them and we'll usually just stick it in the refrigerator at the hotel or something. And I mean, we'll use those as something to snack on. Or you can bring them on the flight with you or in a car. So yeah, those, what I like about them is they're compact and they're not crumbly. They don't make a big old mess. So they're also good for road trips so that you're not making crumbs all over your car. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite go-to things. And my last recipe, I'll show you right quick, is again, so I was talking about making the white beans and having 3 different, actually, rewind, I forgot because I didn't put it out here. Aha, speaking of white beans, I did not forget to tell you, is that actually, I will put a 1/2 cup of white beans in my trail mix bars because it adds a little extra nutrients. You can't taste it. So again, especially if you're trying to get some more nutrients into yourself or your children or your grandchildren, you just blend up some white beans and you can kind of sneak it in there. Same thing, white beans, you can sneak into a lot of things. So for instance, if you're making that pantry soup and you got people who are anti-beans but not allergic to them, but just like beans, you can blend up the white beans, put it in the soup. They can't taste it, they can't see it, but it's there. So again, that's a way, like, again, you're not trying to be deceiving, but it is a way to bring in beans. I also, a lot of times with beans, I love to use it as an alternative to, say, using like a heavy plant-based mayo for coleslaw. I will make a white bean dressing. And I like a heavier coleslaw, so if you like something that's really light and fresh, the white bean dressing, not so much. But if you like kind of like a heavy, hearty coleslaw, the white bean dressing with white beans and a little bit of vinegar, salt, pepper, onion, garlic. Whip that all up, you got yourself coleslaw dressing and no fat. It's also cheaper than the plant-based mayos that are just loaded with oil and are expensive. This is a cheaper route. So anyway, I almost forgot about that. So the last thing is, plant-based people are eating hummus all the time. Well, I will say that one of my favorite hummuses right now, and it is really quick and easy, is a carrot white bean hummus. And so all you do is you have your favorite little toaster oven, and all you do is you chop this up roughly. Cook those in the oven for about 15 minutes while you're doing some of the other things. Then all you do is you take this and this. If you can either use your immersion blender or your blender, your food processors, your Vitamixer, any of those, stick them in there. So pretend this is my mixer. I didn't bring those with me. So you have your white beans, you got your carrots, you got your onions. Then the recipe I'm giving you calls for having walnuts that you would cook partway through the recipe. So you would do like 10 minutes with roasting the carrots and the onions, then put in the walnuts, and then, cook it a little bit longer. Or if you're in a hurry, and if you have, say, almond butter or sunflower butter, you also can just skip that step and put in about a half cup of sunflower butter into your hummus. Then you add just a little bit of the tamari and the smoked paprika. I also put in, the recipe calls for 1 pepper from like a jar that's been roasted. Again, we've got some leftover, eating them down from last season. Sun-dried tomatoes. Those work as a great alternative to those peppers. And a lot of times too, those peppers are soaked in oil. So these, again, I just soften these up for a few minutes and then put those in. And then you can use a little bit of dry basil if you want, but since right now basil is growing prolifically in our backyard, I just went out and got some fresh basil. And then you can use the fresh garlic, but again, if you're in a pinch, although for y'all, I have a sample of this as well. I did use some fresh garlic, but you can use it granulated. So all you do then, you just stick that stuff, and again, either in something like that, like this would be a little bit challenging for that amount of stuff. So you have to have a bigger bowl, but you could use it as a bowl with the immersion blender or the food processor or the Vitamixer. However, if you have the Vitamixer, it's going to be smoother. The other ones will be a little bit chunkier, but I like a chunky hummus. So, but that, I mean, it takes very little time. And again, those are pretty simple recipe ingredients. And what I like about it is a lot of times too, when people aren't sure about what to feed you as a plant-based person, I don't know how many of y'all get like hummus all the time. So I just find that I like to have a variety of different hummuses to try. And that's that one's a gluten-free tamari. So that one is not soy-free. There are soy-free alternatives, but that one just doesn't have gluten in it. And that bottle is a little bit beat up because we buy the soy sauce or the tamari in a large bottle and reuse a little bottle. So the rest of the bottle sits in the refrigerator. That one, that's what our bottles look a little bit beat up.
It's basically water. Someone asked about it. Tamari is basically water, soybeans, salt, and sometimes alcohol to preserve freshness.
Yeah, those are organic.
Yes.
Organic soybeans. Yeah.
Are there chickpeas?
So a lot of times hummus is made
That's
with
what I
chickpeas.
thought.
So the thing is that hummus does not have to be chickpeas. So I actually rarely do I ever make hummus with chickpeas because of the fact that, like I said, so often, like that's just what you get. Now, don't get me wrong, I love going to a Mediterranean restaurant and getting the hummus, although that's not what I'm afraid. Stacy, but not afraid. But I love doing it with white beans. I love doing it with black-eyed peas. I love doing it with pinto beans, black beans. There's all these different kinds of plant-based hummuses that you can make. You don't have to stick. You don't have to stick with chickpeas. Although if you like chickpeas, by all means, go for it. I like the variety. Yeah. Yeah. So that is how you make the hummus. So other questions, because again, rapid fire.
Does tamari replace tahini in the hummus?
No. So the sunflower seed butter would be that would be a replacement for tahini. You could use, if you wanted to, you can use a tahini in the hummus instead of the sunflower seeds. But yeah, so no, the tamari is giving it the umami, more depth of the flavor. So that would not be a substitute.
Thank you. I just figured out how to unmute.
Soy sauce has wheat in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Could you do sesame seeds in the coffee grinder to make tahini?
Yes. However, it won't be quite as smooth as a regular tahini, but we do that a lot. And if you actually just roast your sesame seeds at a low temperature, like at 250 again, in my favorite toaster oven here, roast it so that they get warm and then let it cool for a few minutes. Then you can put it in there. And then what happens is that helps release the natural oils, so it'll become creamier. Although a lot of times I'm lazy. So for instance, if I'm making pesto, whether it's with, again, collards, kale, basil, I will just grind up the sesame seeds just raw as is in my spice grinder, and then dump that in as a replacement for tahini. Yeah, and making sunflower butter. Again, I just take sunflower seeds, put it on a tray, stick it in my friend over here, and I'll roast it for about 30 minutes at 250. Again, letting the natural oils get released. And then I will stick it in. You can use an immersion blender, you can use your Vitamixer, you can use your preprocessor, you can make sunflower butter. So it doesn't really take long, but the thing is that if you're buying sunflower seeds for $2.99 a pound, again, if these are organic, that's just a quote from the co-op in Pittsburgh. That's a lot cheaper than when they charge you anywhere between $6 and $8 for a jar at the grocery store. And again, I buy the sunflower seeds raw, unsalted. And then if you want to add a little bit of salt to your sunflower butter, you certainly can, but you don't, no, there's no oil added. It's just the natural oils from the seeds that are in here. Yeah,
Do you keep it in the fridge?
I do. Mhm.
What did you have?
If you keep it in the refrigerator, I do. Yeah, just like our peanut butter, we keep in the fridge. Yeah.
Is sunflower butter healthier than almond butter?
So, well, it depends on how you, so for instance, if you have a allergy to almonds, yes, it is healthier. However, in terms of, if you're just looking purely at the nutritional standpoint,
Yes.
the thing is that they all have, slight changes, and this one has a little bit more of this one has a little bit more than this. So again, it's not that this one's necessarily better than this one, because they have different things. So if you are, looking at the full spectrum of eating all different kinds of foods, a lot of times I would say, and just look at also, are you concerned about, almonds? Okay, well, almonds of the plant or of the nut world, they do use the most water. Now, if you compare almonds to, say, the dairy industry or the meat industry, it's far less. But of the nut world, almonds also, in addition to the water utilization, there's also environmental concerns, particularly as it relates to the bee population. So we do buy our almonds. We are fortunate that we do buy our almonds from a biodynamic farm in California. They're shipped to us via Amazon, so it's not, and again, they're, pretty reasonably priced. So we'll source our almonds that way. But otherwise, if you're just buying the conventional almonds, if you are concerned about the environmental impact, then, so when you say healthier, again, I'm always looking at our food choices and how does it impact, me certainly, but also like the community and the environment. And so it's not just one or the other, but it's the collective looking at my choices. Yeah.
Your immersion blender there, I like it because it's not real heavy and huge.
No, yeah, exactly.
Where do you get that one?
Uh,
Oh, that's part of it there.
no, this is. Yeah, so, but then it's not very heavy.
I actually found one in Marshall's, mine,
Mhm.
and it was a Cuisinart.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like Marshalls, Aldi's, a lot of places now have immersion blenders. And the old ones, they call them stick blenders is another thing. They used to be all one piece, which was kind of a pain, but now, they're small and compact, and it sits in the second drawer in my kitchen, immediately accessible for me to use all the time. Yeah.
When I puree my soups, I do not put it in a. food
Right, exactly.
processor.
Here,
Just stick the
yeah.
immersion blender in and.
So yeah, if you're pureeing soups, there is no need to put it in a blender or a food processor, because one is, from a safety standpoint, especially if something's hot, that reduces the chance of you burning yourself. Two, from a standpoint of ease, this is much easier to go.
It's so fast.
Three, that's one less thing to clean.
Right.
So it's safer, it's easier, and it's faster. So yeah, I would definitely puree, immersion blender, as opposed to sticking it in something. Yep. Any other tricks or tips that people have to share? That's a great one. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning it.
Here's a little recipe that I just tried, actually. And I was gonna ask you, what dried fruit might work as well, but, you just take a date.
Mhm.
And I bought the organic dates. Split it open, put whatever nut you have, like I put, a cashew, I have the whole, what is it called, the
Yeah.
unsalted, whatever, like the. Put it in the freezer
Mhm.
on a tray,
Yeah.
and then I just, took it out
Mhm.
and dipped it in chocolate, the low sugar Lily's organic.
Oh yeah.
It's called an imitation Snickers bar.
Yeah. No, those are really good. So if you're looking for something that's particularly more affordable, more environmentally, socially friendly, is that you can say, for instance, walnuts are better. Like they have, every nut has its issue. Like I could go down every rabbit trail, but if you're gonna go for something that's slightly better than a cashew, walnuts work really well with date. I think that's a fabulous flavor combination if you like. Now, I
That's
think,
just what I had.
yes,
You
exactly.
could probably do pecans.
You can do pecans, you can do any of the other ones, but yeah, I mean, and if you're looking at it from a budgetary standpoint, like right now at Giant Eagle, they're not organic, but if you're on a budget and you're trying to be able to make some stuff, you know, you can buy a pound of walnuts from Giant Eagle for $3.99. Whereas say cashews, if they're, especially if they're organic,
Seven.
I mean, they minimally are $7, but if they're organic fair trade, they can be up to $10, $14 a pound at the co-ops. 10, 14 or $3.99 again. So it depending on, you know, what you're able to afford. Walnuts from an environmental standpoint, as well as affordability. It's sunflower seeds are the cheapest. Then right now, conventional walnuts. And then organic peanuts, for those who don't have peanut allergies, is the next affordable one. Then pumpkin seeds, and then it just starts to get more expensive with your pecans, your cashews, your hazelnuts, you know, all those kinds of things. So I use a lot of the pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, is my base for a lot of things. And we don't have a peanut allergies, so we also eat a lot of peanuts.
You can get some of the nuts at Patel's in Monroeville.
Yes, you can.
Very affordable.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
really cheap, yes.
Where's that?
It's the Indian store. It's a large Indian store by
Olive Garden.
Olive Garden
On
and
Northern Pike?
Yeah.
No, the entrance to the mall.
Near Monroe-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Across from Joanne Fabric.
Other complex.
right, yes, yes.
Yes.
Are your, just left, sunflower seeds?
Yes.
Cold, or do you just put the whole thing in?
No, these are whole, there's no seeds on them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and raw,
Yes, raw. The raw unsalted.
Yeah.
Because then, because I like to use roasted for some things, but the roasted is, like I said, if you're trying to use it for a neutral flavor for a salad dressing, you really want the raw.
Yeah.
And then I don't want the salt, because again, you know, we use a little bit of salt here and there, but regular nuts are way too salty. So now I have a couple of samples for y'all to try.
okay.
And just in case you want, you are online, if you want to see what you're missing, that's the hummus, it's the carrot onion hummus.
Oh, yes.
And then we have the either a rice cracker for anybody who wants to try that with that. I also have cucumbers if you want to try it with cucumbers. And then I also have, and these are fresh organically grown local cucumbers.
They're so organized.
And
Yeah,
then we have the trail mix bars. Again, if you have any tree nut allergies, there are tree nuts in here. If you have any gluten sensitivities, they're made with oat.
Where did you get the rice crackers? Just anywhere?
Actually, those ones actually just came from the Giant Eagle.
Okay.
And you can probably find cheaper elsewhere, but I was trying to find something that was, that would fall into the circle of being gluten-free and only having 3 ingredients in it, or 4 ingredients in it, not 20. And I have also utensils. Any other questions, thoughts? Yes.
Could you give a list of some of the places you buy online?
I use, so depending on how you call it, Vitacost or Vitacost, depends on me. I buy a lot of my pantry goods from them.
I do too.
Yeah, so everything from, like some of our, like steel cut oats, like pantry stuff in here, spices. So like I buy our pound of granulated garlic, or a pound of cinnamon, or a pound of minced onion. Like again, not all of our spices do we buy in that large quantity, but some of our like go-to ones, we definitely buy from them. We also, depending on your preference in terms of how you feel about Amazon, we do use Amazon to buy actually a lot of our stuff. So actually, between those two things, those are probably the 2 places we shop the most.
What's the name of it again?
This one, Vitacost.
Vitacost also has their own brands and
Yes.
it's really
It's
cheap,
really affordable. Like, we buy,
organic. I
uh,
mean, yeah,
like their chia seeds. We buy, say for instance, organic vanilla from them. That's not inexpensive, but you can generally with Vitacost, if you spend about 2 seconds online and finding their coupons, they generally have anywhere between 15 and 20% off coupons online all
Yes.
the time.
Yes.
And the other thing too is once you start buying from them, what I do is I will buy and then like a fairly large order, and then you wait a few months and then they want you to come back. So then they'll definitely give you a 20% off coupon. Or if you're in a hurry, you really need to buy something, but you don't have a coupon, you don't want to take the time. If you just stick it in your cart for about an hour or so, they'll send you a coupon for at least 10% off. So.
We do the same thing. Our moms look exactly alike, yeah.
So that's how you play the game.
And they're not like a membership type.
No,
No, there's no
no,
cost.
no,
No,
they're
but
really, I really have bought them from years. They're
Yeah.
canned, organic canned tomatoes, because I use a lot, tomato soup, whatever.
Yeah.
They're the cheapest.
Or like
Really?
reduced fat, coconut flakes, we'll buy
Yeah.
from them, or the soup broth here. This has no sugar, no salt, it's a German company, but again, I mean, a lot of times we'll just make it ourselves, but sometimes I've run out of soup broth that I've made myself, I just need something quick and easy, so that's a brand, that's a dry product, and again, you can get that, between 15% and 20% off. Yeah, so those are the two places I shop the most.
What was the other one?
Oh, Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
I
it's-
bought off of them.
yeah, no, I do.
Thank you.
But within Amazon, there are some very good companies.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, when I shop on Amazon, I'm always trying to look for, particularly, the US companies, in looking especially like where, like spices and stuff are coming from, family owned, I mean, so, yes, so within Amazon, you have to do your homework a little bit to make sure you're getting good products, but I also want to be aware, they're probably gonna kick us out here at some point.
Oh, no, we're good, we're
Okay,
good. I
okay.
just also want to mention
Good.
that I went down to Penzi Spice in the Strip District. They have it to various, around the
Yeah.
United States. And their spices are pricey, but if you look in the month, like this month, anything begins with a C was 50% off.
There you go,
And their spices are so,
yeah, those are really nice.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
those
so if
are-
you're getting 50% off, then it's going in.
That's
Otherwise,
what, that's, I shop the
expensive.
seeds. Yeah.
Do you, do anything with chocolate, and if so, what brand do you buy or what, because there's just nothing good.
Well, see, the chocolate right now is going through the challenges of, well, first of all, there's the chocolate, and in terms of the fat and the sugars that are in it. It's not to say that I don't ever eat it, but then you have to sit there and then you go from the environmental impact and you're looking at the social impact, and then now you're looking at the whole issue with the lead and the cadmium and all this and this and that.
Yeah.
So, having said all of that, I will sometimes have chocolate, and if I do buy chocolate, usually I will go to Whole Foods and get it's like the red bag of Guittards chocolate. They don't say fair trade on there, however, if you go to the website, it sounds like that they're trying to be fair trade. And that one, of the various lead and cadmium levels, that one seems to be better than some. But I mean, like I said, right now, in that whole world, it's changing daily, because I mean, there's so many things out there that has lead and cadmium in it, or just like, for instance, rice has arsenic. We try to strike a balance of going crazy, but also, yes, there are sometimes when I do want a little bit of chocolate. Yeah, absolutely.
What brand you think is good?
Guittards, it's Gitturd. Again, the problem was, like, I usually would use, I used to use Equal Exchange, but that one tends to, so that one, they're fair trade chocolate. However, their cadmium levels and their lead levels were significantly higher. Although that report changes all the time. So I saw a more recent one that came out the other day. So, I mean, yeah.
Even Hershey's have a dark.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Aldi's, I get my chocolate at Aldi's,
Any-
85%. That's what I like.
Yeah, and usually the higher the cocoa,
Yeah.
the
I
less
know.
the sugar, and the less
Yeah.
like cocoa butters and stuff. Yeah.
What
So-
about cocoa powder?
So I use
called?
I use cacao powder.
Or something.
And again,
The one you buy the chips.
I think that one most recently, I think it was Millard's. I bought that one online. That's an organic fair trade cocoa powder. I'll use that. Because in that way you're also not using Millard's. I think it's Millards. I think, not entirely sure. I don't use a lot of it, but that one, I also use cacao nibs, but again, same thing, like that also doesn't have the sugars and the fats added to it. However, it too suffers from the lead and cadmium. So we eat chocolate, just not, or, chocolate stuff, but just not as much as one would hope. I really like from a taste spectrum, but I mean, it's supposed to be a special treat anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other
It's like
questions?
being a good show or something.
All right, anybody else online?
Anybody online here, your last chance to ask a question unless you come here and get some
Oh, yeah,
tasting.
sure.
Yes. Well, we appreciate the online folks, and you will get a link to the video and you'll get the recipes. And the next Zooming that we'll do, in September 14th, let me rephrase this, we'll have our community picnic. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area, please come. It's a lot of fun and it's delicious. It's a potluck, and it's September 14th, Saturday, 1 to 3. And then October, we will have another guest presenter. And stay tuned, and we'll have some Zoom there. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you all for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
Reverend Dr. Karen Webster. That was fantastic. Yeah.
Toss it up and have some if y'all like.
Where's that held?